always a thrill to talk to our friend Adam Schefter, particularly on a week when we're all a little uneasy. Good morning, Adam. How are you doing today?
Good morning, everybody. How are we doing?
Packers fans are flying pretty high headed into week one against Philadelphia. And if the game had ended before it actually ended, I think they would have walked away pretty satisfied with how the team looked. But of course, Jordan Love gets hurt, and now they are without him. What is the latest you're hearing on the timetable for his return?
I always thought it was going to be 3 to 4 weeks. And I think if you look at it, what it means to me is that they play Indianapolis at home this week. They play at Tennessee, and they play Minnesota at home. Now, let's see how he is recovering. Let's see how he's rehabbing. Let's see how he progresses or doesn't progress. But I always felt like that game against Minnesota would be the game that would be marked on the calendar, a home game against the Vikings. Now, again, it's nice to just think that and say that. It's another thing to actually do it and be practical about it. But I think that would be, in my mind, a target date that he might be able to try to get back for if he's okay. And look, let's be honest also. If Malik Willis can go out and play well and they could find a way to win a game or two, that might make Jordan Love and the organization a little less anxious. Although they're going to be always very careful and conservative anyway when it comes to medicals. But if they start losing, you just wonder if that's going to speed up things in his mind, Jordan Love.
Adam, what can you tell us about Malik Willis? Was he going to make the team in Tennessee if they didn't trade him?
You know, I don't know whether he would have or wouldn't have. My guess is he would have, but he was a commodity as a talented third quarterback. Clearly, they preferred to go with Mason Rudolph, which is why he was available, and they felt like Malik Willis, his talent was enough that they could get something back for him, which they did from Green Bay. And when Malik Willis was coming out, there were a lot of people who thought at that time that he would wind up going in the first round, and he didn't. He slipped some in the draft, and he's been in Tennessee, and the talent is there. And obviously the Packers saw something in him that they identified that they felt like would be valuable to have. But let's be honest, this is not a position that I think any team wants to find itself in. You don't want to lose your starting quarterback, the highest paid player in football, and have to turn to any backup quarterback, period.
Adam, a lot of comments about the playing surface on Friday in São Paulo. The league doesn't care about that, right? Like it's
No.
done, it's passed. They
care, but what do you want to do? Like,
I'm just saying I don't think they care in that. I mean, if they cared, the surface wouldn't have been what it was. Like, we've seen this in other stadiums before, and the league just doesn't seem to really care about whatever surfaces they're on.
Well, the Super Bowl, the 49ers were all worked up about the condition of their practice fields. Like they were a disaster in their minds. And they complained to the league, and the league was like, hey, this is what it is. We feel like they're ready and in good condition. And the 49ers vehemently disagreed, and they went and had to practice on those fields all week long. And in this particular case, I think the league does what it can to ensure or to try to make sure that the field is in as good a shape as it is. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But in this particular case, everybody could see it was slippery. And then it's up to teams to make adjustments with the footwear that they wear. And it's not ideal. I don't know that the condition of the field contributed to Jordan Love's injury at the end. Do you?
No, I don't. It was just kind of a general comment, guys.
Adam.
I mean, I saw a couple of pictures of those end zones, Adam, after the game, and there were chunks of turf missing out of it. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah. I mean, Jordan's injury was what it was at the end. It had nothing to do with the field. This is just in general.
But Adam, I'm also blown away on how many players wear molded cleats. I've never worn a molded cleat on grass before. I've always worn 7 studs, and I understand why players do, because the theory back then was, you're at more risk of hurting your knee if you wear a molded cleat as opposed to a 7 stud. But I mean, there's just no traction with a molded cleat, and I think that's part of the reason why.
Was Jordan Love wearing a molded cleat? Do we know,
I don't know, but I saw Saquon Barkley when he slipped on the first play of the game or second play of the game. He's wearing a molded cleat, and I'm like, how is a running back you wear a molded cleat? I think they're just terrible.
See, you know what? But sure, you would know that far more than I. Like I don't wear molded cleats to work, right? Like you've had experience with this stuff, so
I think you should. I think you should start doing that, Adam.
You know who does is Jim Harbaugh. I've seen Jim Harbaugh wearing cleats on the
you can make it a
sideline.
Michigan thing, Adam.
See, exactly.
Well, You know what? Let me see if I get some molded cleats for Monday night. Let's see.
Just start walking around on it. But give it a couple of inches. That's the space that I know about. How can I get taller on television? What was your biggest takeaway from week one? Obviously, you had the dynamic kickoff. You got new coaches. We mentioned Harbaugh, obviously. Rookie quarterbacks, how they perform, rookie wide receivers. What was your biggest takeaway from week one of the NFL action?
Jen, it is hard to narrow it down to one, but let me give you a couple of things off the top of my head. Talked about it, some of this in my podcast today, but the Chiefs look like they're going to be better than they were in either of the last 2 years when they won the Super Bowl. That's number one. Like, they look like they've got a lot of weapons. They look like they're the real deal. That's the upside, I think, or a positive story. The one story that got my attention this weekend was Daniel Jones struggled and was booed. Bryce Young got lit up in New Orleans, and Deshaun Watson struggled. And so let's just look at all three of those situations in Cleveland, Carolina, and New York. Deshaun Watson had shoulder surgery last November, hasn't played since then, lost his father last week, lost a close friend last week, didn't play in the preseason. There's a whole lot that he had to overcome. And so we're gonna give him the benefit of the doubt for the way he played last week. But he cannot play like that, and he's got to get better or it's going to be a problem. Bryce Young, I was on the way to the airport in San Francisco, and I had on, I'm watching some of the games, and so I just saw one highlight. So it's hard to say exactly what happened, but the highlight was Dave Canales, the Panthers' new head coach, walking over to Bryce Young on the bench after he threw an interception. And Bryce Young looked to me, when I saw that shot, like a defeated guy, like a guy who lost his confidence. And if I'm right, if that is what it is, like, that's a big problem for that franchise, like a big problem. They gave up a ton to go trade for him, and he looked beaten to me. And then Daniel Jones, they paid him, and they paid him a lot of money, but in the quarterback market, not really. But he has thrown 2 touchdowns in the last 8 games, I believe. You got New York fans booing him. You got his own team questioning him on the Hard Knocks off-season series. And if he's not going to make it, you know what that means? It means that other people are going to lose their jobs too. So I just, my first thought was like 3 teams where you look like there's quarterback questions, major quarterback questions. And how are they going to respond to them in the weeks to come?
Adam, were you surprised on how bad Deshaun Watson looked?
Yes and no. I thought he actually would bounce back this year. And that's why I say I still think he might. Let's not judge him after 1 week. But there were some worrisome signs that you saw in that game. You're like, what if he's not bouncing back? Like, again, they sunk $230 million guaranteed into him. It's a lot of money to get past.
Let me jump on that really quick, Gabe, because obviously we all saw on Monday that there are new allegations against Deshaun Watson. I don't want to get into all the details of that here on this program, but there are questions now, Adam, about whether or not the Browns could actually get out of his contract. If there's a way that they could void that contract that everybody thinks is an albatross, everybody says you should have buyer's remorse over. Is there a way for the Browns to get out of the Deshaun Watson contract?
Well, there's language in the settlement that he made with the NFL the last time that precludes him from being disciplined unless it's something that's entirely new. Now, is this something that's entirely new? Is this the same as it was? I don't know. The league would have to figure that out. It sounds like more of the same to me. It's certainly the same attorney. So let's see over time. My guess is no, but again, everybody's taking a look at it and investigating it, and we'll see how that shakes out.
2 points of emphasis heading into this season, Adam, and you saw one on display on Thursday night with procedural penalties against the Ravens and Chiefs for not having offensive linemen far enough up. And after I watched that game on Thursday, I was terrified for the rest of the week. Do you think the league, coaches across the league, saw that game on Thursday and said, we got to make sure everybody's up? And the other one was hip drop tackles, and I don't think I saw a single hip drop tackle flag this weekend.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because on the first thing, I think that the league sometimes emphasizes points of emphasis, and they try to make sure that they are telling teams in their way, we're not going to take this year, and so they called a lot of those penalties early on, but then on the hip drops, yeah, you didn't see any of those penalties called, and I did see a hip drop tackle on Monday Night Football. They played it early on. I'm trying to remember who it was, but I remember just saying to myself, _𝘃 Jennings. I said to myself, that's a hip drop tackle like that, and it wasn't penalized. So, again, I also think it was a little bit of an adjustment the first week for the refs too, not just quarterbacks, and they'll continue to adjust, and we'll see if that's called here moving forward.
Adam, were you surprised on how average the Jets looked, or you just chalked it up to week one?
Both? How about that? Like, I honestly thought, well, no, I told people, like, I was talking to a bunch of the Niners before and the Jets before, we're in San Francisco, and I really thought that the Niners were vulnerable and the Jets would be able to play with them, keep it close, and have an opportunity to win the game. And they came out early on and had that drive with Aaron early on where they took the lead, and I said, here we go. This is going to be exactly what I thought. And then it wasn't. It just wasn't. And maybe I was unrealistic in thinking, to the point that I mentioned earlier, that they could just step in there after Aaron Rodgers hadn't played since last September, no preseason action, and just go out and beat the 49ers in San Francisco. I thought that they were going to come out and play a better game than they did. Now, they feel like there were signs and signals that they could improve in a lot of areas. They were not overly concerned. They came out of week one, even though they won last year, in better shape than they did this year, which they lost. They have their quarterback, and they'll try to build off that. But, yeah, I thought the Jets would have more of an opportunity to win the game Monday night than they wound up having.
Adam, I have a question for you about tailgating. I'm not sure the last time you were out at a tailgate. Not sure if you have a preference when you are tailgating, but the Green Bay Packers put out a poll saying the most elite tailgating food is. And your options are burgers, hot dogs, and chicken wings. Now, you can go off script like many people did and also say bratwurst. Of those options, what is the most elite tailgating food?
Oof. Jen, I don't often go to tailgate parties. I do when I'm back in Ann Arbor. By the way, like, was that coordinated? Because you asked me about tailgate parties just as Gabe and Chewy are, like, drinking from their jugs. It looked like it was coordinated. It looked like it was like some kind of commercial we're shooting or spot.
5, 6, 7, 8. No, it was not. I know.
Right? Like, at the same time, everybody's drinking. We're talking about tailgate parties. Like, what's going on here? So,
perfect.
That was the first thing I noticed. I'm like, am I being set up here? Am I being punked? Is this some sort of spot? But I would say, it depends. If I'm in Wisconsin, I'm going to have a bratwurst. Like, that's going to be my tailgate food. That's going to be my go-to. Like, if I'm in Ann Arbor, I'm probably going to have a burger. Like, that's the way it's going to be. Like, in fact, if I was in Ann Arbor, I'd even say we're bringing in sandwiches from Zingerman's. Like, that's the way it's going to be. We're going to have Zingerman's cater our tailgate, and we're going to drink some beers and have some sandwiches.
What kind of sandwiches?
Wisconsin, I'm bratwurst. So I think it's a function of where you are. Yeah. If I'm in Buffalo, I want wings. I want wings in Buffalo.
If you're Poland, you want borscht.
No one wants borscht.
I guarantee Adam's had borscht before. Adam?
You know what, Chewy?
Yeah.
I've been around borscht. Not having a borscht, okay? Not having a borscht, okay? I've seen it, okay? So don't make assumptions that you think it's necessarily happening. It didn't really happen, okay?
You know what that means? That means he had the option of having borscht and chose not to, okay?
Been in the presence of borscht
That is
before.
not an endorsement for your favorite food over
and I've been
there.
around liver and onions and liver and all that stuff too, Chewy, and I don't eat that either.
All right, Adam, we appreciate you hanging out with us this morning. Have a great week.
How do you guys feel about the game How do you feel about the game this weekend?
Terrible.
Malik Willis at home.
Absolutely terrible.
They got a chance. Just LaFleur's he's got to have his A game.
And look, we talked about the Chicago Bears and the way that they won last week. The Packers do happen to play the team that the Bears beat over the next few weeks. But everything we're hearing about Malik Willis is he's no good. He's certainly not Jordan Love, so you will have to change your game plan.
They're going to have to win by running the football, playing good defense, and making some special teams plays. Like if you're telling me that Malik Willis is going out and throwing three, no, I don't think that's happening on Sunday. Okay, they're gonna have to win. They're gonna have to win 17-14 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and of course,
like
I mean,
grind it out.
And everybody knows,
by the way,
Adam, everybody knows the Packers are famous for, making great defensive plays and not stinking on special teams.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to force Anthony Richardson into some mistakes here. That's what they're going to have to do.
Mm-hmm.
We're not saying it can't be done. We're just saying we don't think it can be done. You know what I mean?
Like, could it happen? Sure. If I were to log on to ESPN Bet or head over to Pato, would I bet it for it to happen?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Could Adam have borscht for lunch? Possibly. Is he going to?
No.
We don't think so.
No. Impossibly.